Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and Diablo 4. With our recent round of mid-season class rankings and best builds overall for each class, it is time to end it with the main overview. What are the 10 best builds overall post-Malignant update? I've talked to a lot of people about this, we've tested many builds, and we've watched a lot of footage. So I think we've got a fair showing of what the 10 best builds currently are, and we're going to work our way up from 10 to the top, starting then with Druid and the Werewolf Tornado build. Druid with its Tornado build just makes it onto the list, and that's because as a class, it's not broken, which is a weird thing to say, but it says a lot about Season 2. Druid in Season 2 is in a great place, able to set up with its required uniques a lot faster than before. The builds are strong and viable and fun. Boulder is working well now, Pulverize is tanky in your face. You've got Stormclaw and Tornado Wolf all feeling very good. Just compared to Rogue breaking its combo point limit or Ball Lightning Sorcerer just being that. Barbs with their one-shot Uber Lilith builds. But with Druid, it's just reasonably good. That's good for Druid long term because I think a lot of the broken stuff won't make it to future seasons where Druid will continue on as it is, maybe just get better and better. So it's still a good season for Druid, it's just not one where they're busted strong. With that in mind, I think their overall best build is probably Tornado. With their new Malignant ring, they can now pull in enemies, which is great because it helps group up mobs and destroy them more effectively. The Tornado playstyle allows for medium range gameplay if you need to, so in tier 100s or other dangerous situations, you can play a bit slower and safer, and the burst potential is there, but the build has great movement speed, leading to great speed clear potential, or bullying your way for a tier 100 pretty quick. Generally though, I find the Tornado build to have the most potential long term, able to tackle a variety of content and situations best. Stormclaw is a tight comparison, and things like Pulverized is also great, but none of these builds have nutty DPS where the other builds we're going to talk about today just do. So Tornado Druid is my number 10. Moving forward, we have number 9 above that, which I believe to be the classic Twisting Blades Rogue. This build is great, but it's also yet completely overshadowed by the broken builds. You've got super strong burst in AoE for mob clear, amazing mobility through dashes and shadow step, evasive gameplay with the Twisting Blades. You work in some poison, you got great damage over time, which is really good this season, especially with the new unique ring, X-Files, giving you that extra burst in AoE, but also useful in single target too. You can see how with enough setup, you can really burn through health bars. It's very good. And there's tons of ways to run Twisting Blades build, like the popular Death Trap, or imbuements for your single target. Thanks to Tibault's will, that unique and meta dashing, you've got constant unstoppable so you can never be stopped, and also a huge burst because of it, even helping with the energy regen. And the attack speed potential, thanks to the vampiric powers like Ravenous and Moonrise. It's insane. It's funny though, because that crazy attack speed and the fact that you're spamming Twisting Blades constantly, sending piles of them out back to back, it means you never really have time to build up combo points, break the cap and benefit by overcharging one of these core attacks. Other builds make better use of it, like Rapid Fire, giving you those windows to build up to like 20 combo points and then spend it. So just like the Druid builds, I think the busted things in Season 2 overshadow a classic build like this that I think will come back in force in Season 3. At number 8 above these though, I'm thinking it's Infinite Mist. Damage is king right now, and single target DPS most important of all. Damage reduction or total avoidance is nice, but nowhere near as important. And when the Bloodforges hit in the Zur event, apparently they're going to be much more deadly than tier 100s. We're going to see how that is in practice, but if that's true, Infinite Mist might be poised perfectly for exactly that, with its near constant damage immunity while dealing with packs of enemies. Right now, what we have is more than enough burst to clear tier 100 packs instantly, and we've got great single target DPS too. I'm able to clear an Uber Lilith in this build happily, using a version where I push that single target DPS as much as I could. The issue here is I don't have enough DPS to bypass the boss mechanics entirely. I actually have to do a few of them, like dodging missiles in phase 2. But the damage is more than enough in a tier 100 where you just steamroll through the packs of mobs and elites easily while being relatively constantly stormed or blood misted. The output's going to be great. The more targets there are, the more your cooldowns reset, and so it does best when it's surrounded. In the Bloodforges, I think we have serious potential here, but with our current meta being more about single target burst, it's not as good. Which brings us to number 7 just above that, which is an interesting new build by Josh on the channel here, the Charged Bolts build for Sorcerer. Kind of like Infinite Mist in what I was just talking about. The DPS is lower in single target than other Sorcerer builds, but maybe when the meta changes with Bloodforges, it could be a lot more relevant, where the DPS just needs to be a minimum effective amount and the focus needs to be more on survivability. The Charged Bolts build compared to Blizzard or Ball Lightning has way more survivability. It is the tankiest Sorcerer build that holds relevant DPS that Josh has talked about recently. You can see here how it outputs solid DPS against Uber Lilith, just like Infinite Mist does, but not enough to dumpster the fight in the same way. It has the minimum DPS required to clean house though in a tier 100 and destroy any mini boss you might find there, all while being, yes, much more survivable. Again, the Bloodforges are coming, and that might be where this is a lot more relevant. The build basically makes use of the Firebolt enchantment to deal burning damage over time, which is used in perfect combo with the X-Files unique to deal explosive AoE pops based on that damage over time. The Firebolt enchantment applies a dot every time you hit an enemy. You can stack up many of these dots going at once, and each individual type of dot means X-Files has more chance to actually proc. Charged Bolts itself sends out multiple lightning bolts bouncing around the area at medium range. Each individual bolt then counts as its own hit, applying its own unique Firebolt dot, stacking up the many dots, so again you're going to get more X-File pops. With enhanced Charged Bolts, the third time an enemy's hit by these casts, it'll AoE again, spreading even more Firebolt stacks. And so that's the basis of how this works, letting you use a medium ranged core playstyle to spread your massive amount of damage over time. Proper ranged Sorcerer, which is quite the concept these days. So if you'd like to learn more about the build, we should have a full build guide out on the channel now, or very soon at least. Moving up just one to number 6 then, I think it's the Blizzard or Ice Spikes build again for Sorcerer. Directly compared to Charged Bolts, we simply have higher DPS here, more than enough to crush Uber Lilith fast enough to bypass the major mechanics. It's a build-up situation though, so once it gets going and you're raining down many hits of these shards on a set location, it is crushing, but it's also held back by the fact that it needs to get going compared to some builds that just get going instantly. Josh's recent build on this is based on Lucky Hit, where you see consistent hits of 1.5 million crits and many ticks of 500k that stacks up a lot when you've got a lot in a target area. In terms of mob clear, it's still ultra strong though. We don't need to build up anything on the spot to get going here. You just drop one on a pack and it just dies. You can do it also from reasonable range with your massive pool of mana to spam them out the place. There's a nice clip here where Josh is spreading blizzards around an entire room for an event, covering every section, and as the mobs spawn, they're being hit wherever they are and basically instantly dying. And you know, in many cases bosses have that little wind up as they spawn. They're immune for a moment as they get going, or maybe they come back from a certain phase in the fight. So there's plenty of opportunities to layer these stacks of blizzards on their location so that the build-up is there from the moment they exist. The DPS actually isn't far behind Ball Lightning initially, and if you can stack up a pile of them, it can even be higher than Ball Lightning. But the reality is, a lot of the time you don't really have the opportunity to set up 8 casts on the spot before a fight begins. It does happen, but not always. So in essence, it's high DPS, it's an interesting setup, unique playstyle, not actually that far behind Ball Lightning in terms of DPS potential. Just requires the setup, and the builds above this one that also require setup have higher burst, or basically they don't have setup. Which brings us to number 5, which I believe now to be Upheaval, our first Barbarian build we're talking about today. Upheaval was a very impressive Barb build in early Season 2, but it wasn't until the new Malignant ring that's really made it more relevant. Said ring is the Red Furrow unique, gives you a quick way to get a guaranteed critical hit on your next Upheaval, or Deathblow, or Hammer of Ancients. It also enhances said crit by 30% times on a top roll, which stacks with, say, the guaranteed overpower every 20 seconds from a vamp power, and that's made even stronger through your unique amulet tied to overpower, and even Tibault's Will after a meta dash where you make the enemy vulnerable. So there's a lot of different ways you can set up for this big burst, killing most anything, even with a couple of these setups, even if not all of them. Upheaval itself works like a close to medium range cone that blasts anything within it, allowing for a semi-range playstyle, meaning you could slow things down and play at a medium range during tier 100s. Maybe that'll be relevant in the Bloodforges. Barbs are normally bullying their way through content by one-shotting anything that attacks them, preventing damage from killing them by killing the enemies instantly. So Upheaval as a build lets you find a middle ground, a bit of range damage, kill enemies before they even get to you. For mob clear this is great, but it's even better when you have the Hellhammer unique, which turns turns your upheaval into a sort of burning cone, dealing damage over time for 4 seconds. In terms of actual burst, just like the Hammer of Ancients or Deathblow, it can one-shot Uber Lilith phases, therefore easily it'll do the same to Duriel. The final boss of a dungeon's never really going to stand a chance. It might not hit as hard as Hammer of the Ancients, but it does provide a unique, safer playstyle, which again could be relevant in the Bloodforges. So it definitely deserves a mention, and I think it's pretty decent in terms of the rankings. But now we come to the top 4, which I've spoken on recently in different videos about mid-season quite a few times, so I'm going to be pretty quick on this. If you are interested in any of these though, we have a build video on each of these on the channel right now. So number 4 I believe to be Bone Spear, due to its insanely strong, instantly effective burst, and then also very impressive DPS that it maintains by just throwing more spears. And with some good attack speed in your build, you send them out so quick. You have aspects like exposed flesh, so you're generating a ton of essence and vulnerability by just throwing bone spears. And with a meta dash every 4 seconds, you maintain a massive damage buff, but also get a load of essence back too. With things like Bone Storm active, you're going to be smashing everything for millions and millions of damage per bone spear, which breaks into splinters, dealing even more. It's truly a one-button build that has a bit of utility and benefits around it. And of course, after the Malignant update, thanks to the Sacrilegious Ring, we are auto-popping Corpse Explosions and Tendrils. This means you have that crit strike chance and damage and raw damage buffs all going without having to press other buttons. They just happen naturally, giving you more opportunity to throw more spears. So you can go so hard on the damage that you barely need any mitigation, since even in tier 100s, you can play from such long range you kill anything before it even gets to you, eating single target bosses or elites for breakfast. So it's extremely strong, and I still think it's one of the top builds due to that huge instant output. But I still put 3 builds above it, and they're basically all broken. So first at number 3, we have the literal combo point cap breaking rogue builds. It's now been suggested that it's going to stick around for the rest of season 2, so we were able to commit to making builds around it and go hard. The overcap combo point situation is basically caused by Tibault's will. It has an affix that increases your maximum resource numbers, and for some reason that's increasing the combo point cap. Pair that with Condemnation, the unique that helps generate combo points really quick, and you can reach a potential cap of 23 combo points to spend on your next core, commonly seen as rapid fire, where you burst down targets with just one use, watching health melt at a comical rate. Cotton's now put together a build that tackles the mob clear aspect of the build though, since that's where it was weaker, using things like the Vampiric Power Hemomancy to pop anything on your screen every 4 seconds, with some tricks to increase that damage and even make it a crit every time. The result is a really effective mob clear version of a broken build that still one-shots any elite or boss that it comes across, using the same combo point bug. So it's kind of the best of both worlds for that broken concept, resulting in something so strong and weirdly busted that I'm convinced we will not see it again in season 3. But if you're a rogue in season 2, I'd strongly suggest you give it a try and use it while you can. Above that, number 2 though, it's of course Barbarian and the Hammer of Ancients build. What's better than massive burst DPS set up after a huge combo point cap break? Well, it's a build that simply hits harder in that one hit, with a variety of ways to guarantee an instant kill. Like I said with Upheaval, you have ways to guarantee crit with the new unique ring, you guaranteed overpower, and the ways that you enhance the overpowered damage. The result of all of this is that insane clip with 1 billion damage in one hit by Rob2628, but the more normal result and consistent result is millions of damage, even 500 million in one hit. That kind of damage literally kills everything in the game in one hit, including world bosses. And so that kind of consistent damage means you're one-hitting every mob in tier 100. You can even run an aspect that makes the hammer quake out as you hit, helping mob clear even more. And you know, as a Barb, you're already tanky by default, and you even have your shouts to rely on, so you're very useful in a party too. Just like Bone Spear then, you basically kill everything before it can kill you. The thing is, you're more tanky by default than a Necromancer. The reason I put this build above the broken rogue one is because I just think a form of this will stick around in season 3, where the combo point break probably won't. However, you could swap the two around, it's pretty much that close. Finally though, all the way still at the top, just as before at the start of the season, it's Ball Lightning Sorcerer, in whatever version of the build you like. Though Josh is particularly happy with a new Malignant ring that means you can run Ball Lightning as your main and only source of damage. After that massive 60% times increased damage once you're going in a fight, which is next to instant, you are dealing the highest consistent DPS in the game, where the broken combo points rogue and world-ending one-hit Barb builds deal more burst. Consistent DPS is kind of more where it's at, especially if you look at open world, speed clearing, tier 100s, and so on. You know, where you need to kill one pack to another pack quickly. Ball lightning never stops. There's no build up, it just goes. And it's also surprisingly tanky, super fast, and it just does it overall best. Where the others have issues like small AoE or minor setup required, ball lightning is just, it's ball lightning. I think we all know about it at this point. We all know just how strong it is, and so it's easy to say, yeah, it's still number 1. Which brings us to the end. These are the top 10 builds of mid-season 2 post-Malignant ring update, at least in my current opinion. Of course, it's pretty much like splitting hairs when we look at the top end of this list. You could swap them around however you like, it wouldn't really matter, but it is fair to say that any of these builds on this list are very good picks to run in all content, with some being better in certain content over others. But I am interested to see how things might change in, say, the Blood Forges. Will survivability matter more than pushing higher DPS? And I think there's a good chance of that, in fact, assuming you still reach like the minimum DPS required to clear mobs and the mini bosses effectively. I hope this overview was helpful, but for now, I've been HotA, you've been you. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and HotA with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.